Welcome to Mom of Eight Conversations on the Win-Win Women Network. I'm your hostess, Reagan Barnes, and today we're going to focus on gratitude. Gratitude is the attitude that changes everything. It can make messes into wonderful messages and turn victim life into victory life. I believe in the power of gratitude. And by sharing the stories that I will share today, I hope that you will come to believe in it too. The first story that I'll share, all of these stories are from the Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Positive. And there's a whole chapter of cute stories about gratitude. So that's where I'm getting this material, even though all of it is written in first person. It's not actually written by me or about me. But that's the wonderful thing about stories. They can take other people's experiences and turn them into lessons for ourselves. Many times we do or say something positive, something kind, but we don't see the impact that it has on other people. We may practice random acts of kindness, but we never know what happens next. One time, I was lucky enough to find out. I was returning from a business trip to Northwest Wisconsin when I stopped to refuel and get a snack at one of those travel plaza gas station combos on the expressway. It was late, I was tired, it was starting to rain, and all I wanted to do was get home, but home was still more than 2 hours away. I was feeling slightly crabby and my back hurt from all the driving. I went inside to buy some veggie chips and sparkling water. The checker smiled at me and we chatted for a moment. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I do remember the kindness she showed me. Our brief interaction brightened my spirits, and when I got back in my car, I had a smile on my face. My car and my stomach were both refueled, but more importantly, I was refreshed. Her small act of kindness kept me going on the last leg of my journey home. The next week, I was cleaning my purse and I came across the receipt. The receipt reminded me of the clerk's warmth and it had the address of the store. On impulse, I decided to write a quick thank you note to her manager. I normally don't write thank you notes. In fact, except for my wedding, I have never written many thank you notes of Thanksgiving or gratitude, but I've learned to heed such promptings. Initially, I felt a little awkward, embarrassed even, to be writing a thank you note to a gas station manager, but I set aside my feelings to listen to my gut. I told that woman's manager exactly what I just shared with you, that his employees' kind words and caring attitude stood out to me, brightening my trip home. It took all of 5 minutes to write the note and affix the stamp to the envelope. I dropped the missive in the mail, and that was that. That is until about a week later when I received a thank you note for my thank you note. The clerk, Robin is her name, wrote me back. As a result of my note to her manager, she received a commendation from her manager, a company award pin, and then to top it off, a merit raise. I was stunned. The note brought tears to my eyes. Robin's kindness inspired me to return her positivity, and there was a small mini chain reaction of goodness. In these challenging times, it's especially important to spread joy and gladness whenever and wherever we can. Whether it's a note or a kind word or even just a smile, a little gratitude goes a long way. More people complain than give thanks. And I've heard it said that it takes 10 kind words to overcome a single harsh one. It sometimes takes a conscious effort on our part to say more positive words than negative ones and to do more positive things than negative ones. But the ripple effect of that goodness is powerful. Mother Teresa advised us to do small things with great love. Oftentimes, when we do such small things, we don't get to see the effects of our kind words or deeds, but every so often, we're blessed to discover the positive outcome. If there's one thing I've learned from writing that short note, it's to give in to the impulse of kindness when it strikes. You never know what good may come of it or where it might lead you. Jeanette Hurt is the name of the person who submitted that story to Chicken Soup for the Soul. The power of the positive. The thing that teaches me, if I want to relate it to motherhood, is that idea of saying more good than negative. Telling our kids, catching them doing the good things just as often or even more so than we catch them doing the bad things. And being sure to point out to them all the wonderful things that we already know and love about them. The next chapter is called The Book of Good Things. College. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. At least that's how it was for me. In the best of times, I was able to embrace new experiences, dig into new subjects, and enjoy making new friends. In the worst of times, I was confused about what I wanted to study and where I was headed in life. I had changed my major once and considered changing it again. Then came the second semester of my sophomore year. I decided to take the semester off since I would be studying abroad all summer and earn a semester full of credits then. So I headed to Washington, D.C. to live with two friends who were spending the semester there doing internships. The experience of living on my own, earning money for rent and food and fun, was an eye-opening but positive experience. I discovered I loved living in the city, the surprises of urban existence. The joy of it all made me want to capture the experience on paper. I began to keep a book of good things. I bought a small notebook and kept a running numbered list of everything that delighted me. Anything could make the list. The guy who sang at my Metro stop, Dorothy's ruby slippers at the Smithsonian, the funny things I overheard on the bus, the salad I ate for lunch. It was all in there. Months later, when I was back at college after my summer abroad, I ran into the worst of times. A full-blown depression, except I didn't know that that's what it was called. I cried all the time and I felt utterly lost. I didn't belong at this school in the Chicago suburbs anymore, but I couldn't admit that to myself or anyone else. It was my book of good things that gave me one of the many nudges I needed to make some changes. Flipping through the pages and pages of things that brought me joy, I realized that much of what I loved was in DC. And I began to see that something I loved to do was express myself on paper. I wonder now what would have happened without my book of good things, which still resides in my garage in a box labeled college. Keeping track of the delightful random moments, those urban snapshots that made my heart so happy, helped me to see who I was and where I belonged. I moved to Washington, D.C. to attend American University, and I changed my major to communications. From that point forward, the confusion and depression were gone, and I knew I was on the right track. It is amazing where gratitude for the small things can lead you. And the author of that excerpt was Nina Taylor. I'm so grateful when people share those experiences, and again, being able to apply this particular message to motherhood is this little idea of the book of good things. Really, motherhood is full of good things, but we don't always notice that amidst the poopy diaper changes or the nighttime wakings. And so I would encourage you to keep that book of good things. Just jot down. Anything can make the list. What if the poopy diaper didn't smell as bad? Or whatever it is. What if the child in the middle of the tantrum gets distracted by something wonderful and beautiful? You can write that down and remember all the good that comes from motherhood and watching our children grow and how we ourselves grow during that time as well. Now, this next one is rather poignant. It is specifically about motherhood. The title of it is Thanks to CF. One of my first despairing cries when the kind young doctor told us our 9-month-old son certainly had cystic fibrosis was, "Oh, dear God, my baby's going to die." Indeed, it was all I could think of those first foggy days and weeks, probably even months. My baby's going to die. My baby's going to die. My baby. And then he wasn't a baby anymore. He grew into a toddler, like any other toddler. He yelled, "No, no, no," with all his might. He swallowed his medicine-laden applesauce. He watched Little Bear DVDs during his thrice daily pulmonary therapy sessions, patting all over his chest and back to loosen the thick mucus for coughing up. He ran from me naked, and he peed on the floor. He occasionally was hospitalized with IVs. He learned colors, letters, mama, daddy. He was cute. He was naughty. He did need extra care to be healthy, but he definitely was not dead. Numerous hospitalizations throughout the years do stymie some developments that experts like to point out on those charts that petrify new parents. They also boast some developments, ones that are more complex to quantify, but are the stuff of real good life. He did figure out how to walk. Who cares when? He fought on and was strong. He did achieve a black belt. Who cares that kids he'd begun with made it a year earlier? His triumph took longer than others, but he prevailed. He played well the cards that were dealt him, as we all must. I admit that parents of chronically ill children feel a strange mix of swagger and humility at their victories. They're sweeter, more costly. Accomplishments, I propose, should be measured by depth as well as height. Thanks to CF. Slowly over the years, our perspective shifted. The pulmonary therapy sessions, once such an imposition, have forged a close relationship that remains to this day. The high nutritional standards, once such a stressor, have forced me to research and refine my culinary skills. The logistical logjam of hospitalizations, once so confusing, has created a certain comfort level in that setting. The existential anxieties, once such a depression, have demanded discussion of the tough topics. Appreciating these silver linings has enlivened our family, from good cooking and stronger bodies to spirited conversations and an easygoing lifestyle. We had more babies and had more fun with them. We saved less money and went out for more ice cream. We dug deeper into our faith, looking for a fix, and discovered profound purpose and consolation. Are we sadder? Sure, but we are wiser and more understanding thanks to CF. Does this mean we take our wisdom and float along with folded hands? Absolutely not. We write letters requesting research monies. We volunteer at fundraising events. We sign up for walks and drug studies and surveys, and we talk. Some things we now know more about, some things less. In some ways, our world has shrunk to just our family. In some ways, our world has expanded to include people, organizations, and ideals, thanks to CF. Now 17, and the eldest of 7, he is the family favorite. The kids all think he is so cool. They pine for his super bedtime snacks, a shake, a pile of cookies, and yogurt, our regular tray full. When IV necessities require a 2-week hospitalization, they are green with envy. He gets a television in his room. He gets whatever food he desires delivered right to him. He gets to handle his own needles. We construct a chart to organize who spends what time there, ensuring no one loses out on visits with the biggest brother. He is the king, thanks to CF. So we hope and donate for a cure. And in the meantime, we live a good, new, normal life. Every single person, CF or not, must march on with our own unique set of talents and troubles. Sometimes the march is more of a tiptoe, or a bayonet charge, or a shouldering by friends. We push ourselves this way now. We encourage all our children this way now. We see other people this way now, thanks to CF. The name of that author is Allison Howell. I'm thankful for her being able to put things into a different perspective, even under such dire and drastic circumstances. And I'm grateful her little boy didn't die right then, and that he moved on with those at least 17 years of his life amidst the trials and difficulties of CF. All right, the next one I'm going to read is called From Misery to Meaning. When I first arrived in Guangzhou, China for my 2-year assignment, the contrast to the life I had led in the US was overwhelming. I knew I had agreed to live in a hardship location, but despite all the books I had read, I was unprepared for the culture shock I experienced in China's third largest city. Suddenly, I belonged to a minority of 2,000 expats among 10 million Chinese. I could not understand a word around me and never recognized where I was because I could not read the signs. I had to constantly clear my throat because of the pollution from the factories and thousands of motorbikes. Combined with the high temperatures and the humidity, it resulted in a permanent gray haze over the city. I felt suffocated by the crowds I encountered wherever I went. From my taxi cab sitting in the jammed traffic, I saw ailing beggars in the streets and old women carrying heavy loads on their bent backs. It made me feel guilty for being a rich white woman and helpless because I was lost in a world I could not relate to. Everything I saw seemed so dismal, so depressing. It didn't take me long to despair, and I yearned to be anywhere else but there. One miserable day, I was complaining to a European colleague. When she told me that she had been in Guangzhou for 8 years and loved it, I was stunned. How could we experience the same place in such contrasting ways? It was as if we were living in 2 different universes. She was happy and upbeat. I was depressed and homesick. Where I saw smog, traffic jams, and language barriers, she saw adventure, opportunity, and culture. I wanted to look at my surroundings the way she did, but I did not know how to do it. During the following sleepless night, I challenged myself to identify 3 things in my environment each day that I would classify as positive. It could be anything as long as it was somehow good or encouraging. In the gloomy world I lived in, this was a difficult exercise. I really had to force myself to be open-minded and creative. I had a hard time finding the first positive thing around me, but I was determined. And later that afternoon, walking through the crowded streets, I started to see things. A smiling child on his mother's arm. Yes, that counted. A man in a business suit buying a piece of melon from a street vendor and then giving it to a beggar. I would not have noticed this scene if I had not forced myself to look. 2 women joking as they chose a live chicken in the meat market. That was 3 for day 1. I had made it. I could do it again. Some days were more difficult than others, but once I started looking for them, I always found my 3 noteworthy good things. After the first week, the exercise became easier, and by week 3, I didn't have to actively search anymore. I easily spotted positive things in many places throughout the day. After 4 weeks, the gray cloud had lifted, and Though it still had a long way to go, Gangju had started to grow on me. I had also stopped feeling sorry for myself. Another month later, on the plane to Hong Kong for a weekend of rest and recreation, I was surprised to see that more than 3/4 of the passengers consisted of Caucasian couples with Chinese girls. The girls all seemed to be between 1 and 3 years old, and they were dressed in designer children's clothing. Many wore headbands with little bows or colored clips in their hair. The parents were hugging and fussing over them. "Hi, is this lovely girl your daughter?" I asked the woman across the aisle. "Yes, this is Ellie Lee," she said, swallowing hard. "We've carried her photo with us for over a year, but we only just met her in person a couple of days ago." Ellie Lee was a beautiful Chinese toddler, dressed in jeans and a pink sweatshirt that said, "I am cute." She kept her dark eyes fixated on her mother while we talked. "Congratulations, how wonderful," I said. "Is she from Guangzhou?" "No, we picked her up in the Nanjing orphanage, but we had to come to the US consulate in Guangzhou to get her immigration papers. And now she is finally coming home to Texas." We kept talking, and I learned that all US adoptions from mainland China had to be finalized in Guangzhou, and that Ellie Lee was one of thousands of orphaned girls each year who was moving from abandonment to affection. For all of them, this plane ride was the first leg on their journeys home. I felt my eyes swelling with tears as it dawned on me that I was surrounded by hundreds of miracles coming true right there, right then. I sat back in my chair and allowed the energy of care and compassion to permeate me. I had to chuckle at the thought that Guangzhou, polluted, crowded, noisy Guangzhou, of all places, had such a special meaning. How could I not be joyful in this place of answered prayers, of love, happiness, and new beginnings? This insight profoundly impacted my perception of Guangzhou. I had not changed a thing about my environment, but I had changed the way I looked at it. And with it, my experience changed from a dreary and self-pitying existence to a vibrant and enjoyable chapter in my life. And the author of that selection was Rita Bosell. I'm so grateful again that Rita took the time to express both the difficulties, but also how she overcame those difficulties merely with a change of perspective. So the next one is, again, a little more directly about motherhood, although I do think that Rita's opportunity to learn about the adoptions there and put all of that in perspective is a neat thing to include about motherhood. But this one is a story of a mother who dealt with a mess. The title of this selection is 86,400 Seconds. "Cars," my not quite 2-year-old son Nathan said, pointing at the hanging display of Matchbox cars at our local grocery store. He smiled sweetly and said it again. "Yes, I see those cars," I said. But Nathan shook his head. "Need cars," he said. "You already have lots of cars at home," I said. Nathan shook his head again and said, quite loudly this time, "Mom, make cars." I glanced around the store and noticed a few people looking our way. But before I could even feel embarrassed, Nathan hollered again, "Need cars!" "Nathan, we're not going to buy a car today," I said in my most soothing voice. "But you can play with your other cars as soon as we get home." Nathan nodded and seemed to calm down. Satisfied that he'd understood me, I turned around to grab some chocolate chips. In that instant, Nathan decided to help himself to a car or two. He reached out to grab the coveted toys, but the plastic hanger they were on caught on a bag of sugar. Nathan kept pulling and ended up knocking 3 bags of sugar off the shelf. They fell to the floor where they, of course, broke open, dumping sugar everywhere. Oh, Nathan yelled, "Mess, Mommy, mess." I think half of our town was at the grocery store that day, and all of them were in the baking aisle staring at me and the mess my son had made. A bag boy came over, saw the mess, muttered an expletive, then called for cleanup on aisle 10. It was beyond embarrassing. All I needed now was for an old boyfriend to appear and want to catch up. That didn't happen, thank goodness, but the entire fiasco was bad enough. When we arrived home from the grocery store, which I will not be going back to until Nathan goes away to college, I put away the few groceries I managed to get before the sugar incident. I laid Nathan down for a nap, praying he would sleep for a long time. Then I sat down on the couch and cried. I'm not sure why. I just did. But just moments into my pity party, the phone rang. I sighed and muttered, "Why can't everyone just leave me alone?" I grabbed the phone and barked a hello. Diane, it's Margaret from church. I'm calling because you're on the prayer chain. Uh-oh. Midweek prayer chain calls always meant an accident or other emergency. What happened? I said. Matthew passed away this morning, she said. Matthew's family attended our church. He was 5, and he'd been battling leukemia since before his 2nd birthday. We'd all known he didn't have much longer, but still, the news hit me hard. Margaret gave me the funeral arrangements as I choked down more tears. When we finally hung up, I returned to my spot on the couch, crying once again. I cried for Matthew's parents. They were more acquaintances than friends, but my heart broke for them all the same. My tears were sad, but they were also guilty. Guilty that just moments before I'd thought I had problems. I'd been in a rotten mood because my son, my healthy, wonderful son, had embarrassed me at the grocery store. It was nothing compared to what Matthew's mother had been through. In fact, she'd probably give anything to go through that experience just to have her little boy back. The funeral was heart-wrenching. It was only the 2nd time I'd attended one for a child, and it hadn't gotten any easier. I was crying before we even entered the church. One of the pallbearers handed me a program. I glanced down and read Matthew's name along with a quote by William Ward. It said, "God gave you a gift of 86,400 seconds today. Have you used one to say thank you?" Matthew's parents had chosen that quote because of Matthew's life of love and gratitude for every day he was here, no matter what that day brought. I thought about my own life and how often I found myself in a bad mood over something relatively minor. I realized how little gratitude I had felt for the many blessings in my life. All of my children are healthy, but I hadn't thought much about that. Instead, all too often, I focused on the small but daily frustrations of having young children. The messes, the temper tantrums, the noise, never getting to hold the remote. But when I think about Matthew and his family, none of that stuff matters. My kids are a blessing, and I'm lucky to have them no matter what. So today, instead of becoming annoyed at them for leaving toys on the floor and arguing over the last fudge pop, I'm going to spend some of my 86,400 seconds being grateful for them. And I'm going to spend even more of that time enjoying them. That selection was by Diane Stark. And again, thank you, Diane. Thank you for helping contribute to an attitude of gratitude in our motherhood. It truly enriches it. Join us again when you can for the live Momversations so that we can have conversations together afterwards. We look forward to that, and thanks again to Win-Win Women for this platform.